The changing face of the UK economy. The United Kingdom, once one of the most prosperous nations in the world, is facing a series of profound economic challenges that have left many questioning its future trajectory. Despite being home to a robust financial sector and a historically strong economy, the country has been grappling with stagnant wages, rising homelessness, and growing inequality. The wealth gap between the rich and poor has widened, and a significant portion of the population is struggling with increasingly unaffordable housing, stagnant wages, and a declining standard of living. However, behind this facade of immense wealth lies a far more complex and troubling reality. While London continues to thrive, the broader UK economy is facing significant challenges. One of the most pressing issues is the rise of homelessness. In 2023, London's local councils estimated that more than 1 in 50 people in the city were homeless. This statistic represents a stark increase in just the past decade, with homelessness rising by over 50% since 2013. Britain now has the highest level of homelessness in the developed world, a situation that has worsened despite the country's reputation as one of the wealthiest in the world. This is a consequence of systemic economic issues, including stagnating wages, rising living costs, and an increasingly unequal distribution of wealth. The stagnation of real wages. One of the most significant contributors to the economic strain in the UK is the stagnation of real wages. Despite the country's relatively high GDP and its reputation as a global financial leader, the wages of the average worker have remained essentially flat for more than 15 years when adjusted for inflation. In real terms, workers in the UK today earn about the same as they did back in 2008. This is a stark contrast to the rising costs of living, which have seen essential goods and services including housing, food, and transportation become increasingly expensive. In particular, the cost of housing in the UK has skyrocketed over the last 2 decades, making it nearly impossible for many individuals and families to afford a place to live, especially in areas like London. This growing gap between wages and living costs has led to a financial squeeze for many workers, with salaries failing to keep up with inflation. While the prices of most goods and services continue to rise, many people find themselves earning roughly the same amount as they did over a decade ago. This has led to a growing sense of economic insecurity and disillusionment among the British population, as they struggle to make ends meet despite working full-time jobs. The stagnation of real wages has not only affected the working class but has also led to a greater concentration of wealth in the hands of the top earners. The disparity between the rich and the poor in the UK has been growing for years, and this trend is only accelerating. The exodus of skilled workers. The stagnation of wages and the rising cost of living have led to an unprecedented exodus of skilled workers from the UK. Young professionals, particularly those in high-demand sectors like finance, technology, and healthcare, are increasingly choosing to leave the country in search of better opportunities abroad. This trend has been particularly pronounced among workers in the National Health Service (NHS), where doctors and nurses are leaving the UK due to poor pay, long working hours, and deteriorating working conditions. For many, the appeal of higher wages and better quality of life in other countries, such as the United States, Australia, and Canada, has become too great to ignore. In New York, for example, a junior professional could earn more than double the salary they would in London, despite the higher cost of living. This stark pay disparity is one of the driving forces behind the growing trend of emigration from the UK. Skilled workers, particularly in industries like healthcare and finance, are being drawn to other global cities that offer better pay and living conditions. Meanwhile, the UK is facing a shortage of skilled professionals, particularly in essential sectors like healthcare, which is contributing to the strain on public services. This brain drain is a serious concern for the UK, as it leads to a reduction in the pool of highly skilled workers available to drive the economy forward. The changing demographics of migration. While many skilled workers are leaving the UK, the country is also experiencing a growing influx of immigrants, many of whom come from lower skilled backgrounds. In fact, research conducted in 2015 found that those leaving the UK were significantly more skilled than those entering. This shift in migration patterns has contributed to a growing imbalance in the UK's labour force. As skilled workers leave, they are being replaced by immigrants who are often less educated and less experienced, which has contributed to a decline in overall productivity. This has further exacerbated the issues facing the British economy, as the country becomes increasingly reliant on low-skilled labour to fill jobs jobs, while the number of skilled professionals continues to shrink. The shift towards a greater proportion of low-skilled workers is having a direct impact on the quality of goods and services produced in the UK. The reduction in the availability of skilled labor is leading to lower productivity, which in turn results in a decline in the overall standard of living for many citizens. As the economy becomes less efficient, it becomes more difficult for the UK to maintain its position as a global economic powerhouse. This shift in demographics is a key factor in the growing sense of economic instability and the rising levels of poverty in the country. The impact on living standards. The exodus of skilled workers combined with the stagnation of real wages and rising living costs has resulted in a significant decline in living standards for many people in the UK. The country's economic performance has been deteriorating relative to its European counterparts, and the gap between the UK and other Western European nations is widening. In 2007, British households were only 8% worse off than their counterparts in northwestern Europe. By 2024, this gap is projected to grow to 20%. This decline in living standards has been particularly pronounced among lower-income households, who are facing increasing financial pressure due to stagnant wages, rising housing costs, and the erosion of public services. The decline in living standards is not only a result of stagnant wages, but also a reflection of the broader economic trends that have been shaping the UK's economy for the past 2 decades. The UK's economic model, which has increasingly relied on financial services and a service-based economy, has failed to provide the broad-based economic growth that the country needs to sustain its population. The lack of investment in key sectors such as manufacturing and infrastructure has left the UK vulnerable to economic downturns and fluctuations in the global market. As a result, many families are struggling to maintain their quality of life, and the gap between the rich and the poor continues to grow. The decline of the UK's economic model. The economic problems facing the UK today are not entirely new. They are the result of long-term structural changes that have taken place over the past few decades. The shift towards a service-based economy, which began in the 1990s, has had both positive and negative effects on the country's economic landscape. On the one hand, the UK's financial services sector has become a global leader, attracting investment and creating wealth. On the other hand, this shift has resulted in the decline of traditional industries like manufacturing and mining, which provided stable, well-paying jobs for many working-class individuals. These industries were particularly important in poorer regions of the UK, where they provided a source of employment and economic stability. The financial crisis of 2008 exposed the vulnerabilities of the UK's economic model. The country had become overly reliant on the financial services sector, and when that sector faltered during the global financial meltdown, it revealed the fragility of the broader economy. Since then, the UK has struggled to diversify its economy and invest in other sectors that could provide long-term growth and stability. This over-reliance on the financial sector has left the UK vulnerable to economic shocks, and it has contributed to the growing sense of uncertainty that many people in the country are feeling. The growing wealth inequality. The UK's housing crisis has played a significant role in exacerbating wealth inequality in the country. The rising cost of housing has made it increasingly difficult for people to enter the property market, leaving them at a disadvantage compared to those who already own homes. Home ownership has become a major source of wealth in the UK, and those who do not own property are being left behind as house prices continue to rise. This has contributed to a growing wealth gap between property owners and renters, with the wealthiest individuals benefiting from rising property values, while those on lower incomes are priced out of the market. In England, there are now 1.4 million fewer social housing households than there were in 1980. And the UK's Gini coefficient, which measures income inequality, has steadily risen in recent years. This growing wealth gap is a significant cause for concern, as it leads to greater social division and reduces opportunities for upward mobility. The widening divide between the rich and the poor is becoming one of the defining features of the UK's economic landscape, and it threatens to undermine the country's social fabric. The UK is at a crossroads. Despite being one of the wealthiest countries in the world, it is facing a number of significant challenges that threaten its long-term prosperity. The rise in homelessness, stagnating wages, growing economic inequality, and the housing crisis are all symptoms of deeper structural problems within the UK's economy. As more and more skilled workers leave the country in search of better opportunities abroad, the UK's economy is being left to rely on low-skilled labor, which is contributing to a decline in productivity and living standards. To secure a sustainable future, the UK must confront these issues head-on. This will require significant reforms to the housing market, investment in key sectors like healthcare and infrastructure, and a shift away from the over-reliance on financial services. If the UK can address these challenges and create a more balanced and sustainable economy, it may be able to reclaim its position as a global economic leader. But time is running out, and the country must act quickly to avoid further economic decline.